رمضان 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 يا حبيب رمضان رمضان ليتك دوما قريب.
خيرا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. ما بعد. Dear respected brothers and sisters, ulama, muftis and scholars and teachers, it's an honor and a privilege to be with you all here today. This session is a very important session because many of us will be giving our zakat and paying our zakat in the next couple of weeks, and so it's really important that we understand not only why and how to calculate, but really what it's serving and what the purpose of this is, right? And this is what this session is about, to help you understand what you're doing, to bring the soul into the practice, and then to further make sure you're calculating it correctly, right? So if we move on to the next slide, so the first question arises: what is zakat, right? And it's very important to understand that what is zakat. It's the third pillar of Islam, and what do we mean by that? We know bunya al-Islam ala khams. Islam is built on 5 pillars. You have the shahada, salah, zakat, sawm, and hajj. These are the pillars. These pillars are like the foundation of faith of Islam, right? According to some muhaddithun, when they narrate and describe this hadith, and they mention in the commentary that if Islam is built, the Messenger of Allah said, "Bunya al-Islam ala khams." Islam is built upon 5. What does that mean? That means this is like the foundation, but the structure is something else. Because if Islam is built on top of these, then that thing which is built on top is Islam. And these 5 pillars are underpinning the Islam. So they mention, what does this mean then? And so a very famous muhaddith, recent muhaddith who passed away last year, Sheikh Muhammad al-Ethiopi, rahimahullah, a famous scholar from Ethiopia, who was living in Mecca and he passed away. He wrote a commentary on Sunan Nasa'i. In there he writes that, look, this Islam doesn't mean the tech Islam that we know. It means adhullul am. It means widespread, universal submission to Allah. That's what it means in this particular hadith. And therefore, if we want submission to Allah to manifest at a micro and macro level, these pillars are the key instruments for that submission and manifestation of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And every pillar plays a function in achieving that. Shahada plays a function in achieving that. Salah plays a function in achieving that. Zakat plays a function in achieving that. And so zakat, as part of that framework, is also adding to that narrative, adding to that macro submission. And we'll understand how and why in the next couple of slides. But zakat has been mentioned in the Quran 32 times. It's been mentioned 32 times. In those 32 times, 30 times it's been mentioned in the meaning of paying, as we know. And 28 times, Salah and Zakah have been linked together. That Allah has mentioned, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. Salah and Zakah have come together over and over again in the Quran. 28 times, which clearly shows and depicts the importance of this practice. Rather, it's an obligation. A person who denies Zakat, then his Islam and Iman becomes redundant. He is no longer considered to be in the faith, because he's now neglected, or he's rejected something which is a core practice of Islam. Then, of course, in terms of payments, it's just a 2.5% that we give annually, which we'll discuss. So if we move on to the next slide. So then look, as I mentioned, look, Zakah is all about connecting to Allah. And every practice in Islam is about that. And we don't really think about this. But truly, this is the goal of everything that we do. There's nothing that we do in life from within an Islamic framework except that it's there to get us closer to Allah. That is the ultimate role for why we do what we do. So if we are performing Salah, ultimately it's there to connect us to Allah. If we go for Hajj, same purpose. Sawm, same thing. Zakah, same thing. If we get married, ultimately that's the reason. If we are buying and selling, trading, transacting, investing, ultimately it should be that this should be, and that's why we have halal finance, because in a halal will allow you to get closer to Allah, because you're spending your money, you're trading, buying, transacting, investing in a way which pleases Allah, and His pleasure, when He's pleased with you, He brings you closer to Him. And so ultimately it'll always be about getting close to Allah. The question I want to raise here is, think about it. Why has Allah made these practices obligatory upon us? Why is salah obligatory? Why is fasting obligatory? Why is zakat obligatory? Why is hajj obligatory? So clearly we all agree Allah is not in need of this. If we look at the worldly system, tax is compulsory to pay because it's of benefit to the government and it's of benefit to the society. So it's the counterparty's benefit. It's not really our benefit. Any compulsory action that's obligatory upon people, it's always that the counterparty usually benefits the opposite party, right? In the world that we see. So for very simple, we wear the face mask. Why are we wearing the face mask everywhere we go? Yes, it's to protect us from others, but at the same time, protect others from ourselves in case if we have COVID. So whatever we do in the worldly life, it's always about securing, preserving, protecting others. Oh, now let's shift the discussion to Allah. Clearly, Allah is not in need of us or of our worship, of our ibadat. So if in the world those things become obligatory, which are there to benefit others, then why has Allah made things obligatory upon us when it doesn't even benefit Him? That principle doesn't apply with Allah, that the counterparty benefits. But we know Allah is Al-Hakim, the most wise. And a being which is most wise, it cannot be that his action is void of wisdom. It cannot be. And therefore, when Allah is all-wise, and His actions are always filled with wisdom, whether we understand it or not, right? And I'll touch upon this further, then it has to be that the benefit is solely for us as we are the other counterparty. In this relationship, it's only us and Allah in all these worships. There's nobody else involved. So clearly we are benefiting. It's clearly for our benefit. It's not for Allah's benefit. So the question is, what is the benefit that we're achieving, acquiring from practicing Islam? Well, think about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His infinite mercy, has made obligatory upon us that which will be a means of our ultimate salvation. It's as simple as that. So Allah is so kind with us, He's so merciful, that He's made obligatory upon us that which will be a means of us being eternally successful in the akhirah. And Allah knew that because of our weakness. He knows how weak we are, how lazy we are. Allah tells it in the Quran that how insan has been created weak, hasty, lazy. These are our attributes. So if Allah had not made salah obligatory upon us, who knows if we would have performed salah at all? If Allah never made hajj compulsory upon us, who knows if we would have ever flocked to go towards Haramain? If Allah never made zakat compulsory upon us, who knows if we would have thought about departing from our wealth and giving in the path of Allah? Who knows if fasting wasn't obligatory upon us, would we have ever stayed hungry for the sake of Allah? And therefore it's purely the wisdom, the mercy, and honestly it's truly the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we cannot thank Him enough that He's made these actions obligatory upon us for our own benefit. And this is what makes us practice this. And that will be a means of our salvation. That's why a companion came to the Messenger of Allah and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, I will only do these things. وَلَا أَزِيدُ وَلَا أَنْقُص. I will not do more than this, neither will I do less than this." The 5 pillars. I'll just do my salah, Sawm, Zakat, and Hajj, nothing else. Hajj, if I recall, is not mentioned in there. And I can't recall it on top of my head. But he mentioned, I'm only going to do these practices, nothing else. It might be what Hajjul Bayt, and it is there. So that's what he mentioned. And the Messenger of Allah said to the companions, look, this person, when he walked away, if you want to see a person from Jannah on this earth, look at that person. Meaning that's his ticket done. So it's truly the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has made this obligatory upon us. So zakat takes us to Allah. And we can't forget that. Every practice is there about taking us back to Allah. But then yes, of course, Allah being so full of wisdom, and this is like what's mind-boggling, right? It's just for us, it's too much to uh, to register in our minds and to process. It's just beyond our minds. Allah's ahkam and his instructions, his guidance, it doesn't have only one benefit. His the way Allah is, the way his infinite knowledge, his infinite wisdom, every practice of Allah subhanahu, everything he's guided, instructed, his guidance, his orders, his commands, really they are a rule book and playbook for making this world function in a way which is harmonious, in a way where there's no chaos, because Allah loves order. Allah instructs for order. His system in the world, in the earth, in the universe is all about order. Look at the solar system, look at the galaxies, everything's in orbit in complete harmony. There's no chaos anywhere. Right? There's no chaos in the system of Allah. Whether we look above above the earth, in the heavens and in space, or whether we look in the earth, in different kingdoms, the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, whichever kingdom we look in, there's always harmony, there's always peace, there's always this amazing, everything's in sync. But then if there's anything out of sync, is human and insan. We're the only ones who are not in sync with the system of Allah. And therefore zakat, it brings a certain part of our lives in sync, which is the economy, the markets, and the society. Zakat brings the order into the chaos, in the chaos that exists in the markets, in the chaos that exists in the society, the disparity that's there between the rich and the poor, the inequality, the imbalance, the gap that's there. Zakat helps to bridge that gap, and therefore that allows and facilitates the recognition of Allah. So every practice that we have, it's all about Allah. It's nothing but about Allah, because our life is just a means to recognize Allah. This everything that we have, we're here in this world to connect with Allah, recognize Allah. We leave very shortly, very soon, in the next few years, which is a reality, whether we like it or not. We are leaving this world, so it's clearly we're on a journey. There will come a time when each and every one of us will go to Allah and will stand alone in front of Allah, and that's the most important. And that's why I always mention this. We have a 60-70 year life, but the most important, and that's on average as well, it's not guaranteed, but the most important from that 60-70 years is the last 10 seconds. That's the most important. It's those last 10 seconds which are the most important of those 60-70 years. However those last 10 seconds are spent, or experienced, or endeavored, then that will be potentially your permanent outcome, and result for eternity. So whoever got those last 10 seconds right, then alhamdulillah, forever and ever and ever, for eternity, he'll have won the pleasure of Allah. And then if you win the pleasure of Allah, you've got nothing to worry about. It's finished. It's game over. Like, you've done it, right? You leave this world, it's done, right? You've got nothing to worry about. Now it's just, you're a king to enjoy. That's simple as that. Allah will give you, and Allah will look after you. There's no doubt about that. And if Allah loves you, then you've made it. So that's all we're trying to do here. With zakat, with salah, with saum, with hajj, we're just trying to make Allah love us. That's all we want. We don't want anything else. There's no other benefit in this life. There's nothing worth living for in this life. If we don't have Allah loving us, then this life is absolutely worthless, and it's a waste. Rather, it'll be a form of regret. And to make those 10 seconds worthwhile, what we need to do is we have to spend our 60-70 years for those 10 seconds. Honestly, that's what life is about. Life is about those 10 seconds. That's all life is about. So we're living 60 years just for those 10 seconds. So the value of that one second each can be equal to 5-10 years worth of your life. Every second could be 5-10 years. How you spend 5-10 years would reflect in those very seconds, in the last 10 seconds of your life. And that's why we have to get this right. So when we give our zakat, make sure we're fully conscious of this. It's just not a payment. Unfortunately, zakat and these practices have become it's all automated, all online. You just push a button, make a few clicks, put your credit card, debit card in, and the payment is made. But nobody's conscious of this. Just like we have khushu' in salah, this devotion. Our scholars tell us, and our ulama and teachers tell us, we should have khushu' in salah. Even the hadith encourages to have this. That Salli Salati Muwaddi'in, that perform Salah like as if you're leaving this world. So zakah and all these practices, we should have khushu. We should be focused in this, in worship. Why are we doing this? Have complete consciousness of Allah. Be completely aware of Allah. Make dua to Allah before giving zakah. When you're giving zakah, speak to Allah. Say, Allah, I'm doing this for you. I'm only seeking you. I don't want anything else. I don't care about anything else. If I have you, I'd have nothing to worry about. If I don't have you, oh Allah, then I have nothing at all. I may be the richest person on this earth. I may have all the wealth on this planet, but really, in a couple of years' time, that will all leave me. And in fact, in this life, it'll also be a barrier, and it'll be a means of sadness and sorrow. So this is why we need to really understand what we mean by this. So if we move on to the next slide. Right, so this is what I've just been mentioning. Zakat plays, as I mentioned, Allah has given us a beautiful pillar of Islam. Look how it plays so many functions. It finances the growth of faith and the faithful. Zakah is only given to Muslims. And the Messenger of Allah told us, "Qad al-faqru ay yakuna kufra." Poverty can lead to disbelief. And we know there was a category of zakah, which was wal-mu'allafati qulubuhum, which was practiced in the early time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that zakat was given to non-Muslims to bring them closer to Islam. The Messenger of Allah did this. Or he gave zakat to those who are weak in their faith to make them stronger in their faith. So that clearly shows us that zakat is related to Iman and Islam and faith. It's about empowering faith, empowering the faithful. Those who are poor, we want them to be stronger, make them feel part of the community of Islam. Right? It's a human capital fund which seeks to empower individuals, which we know, because when I give zakat to somebody, I'm empowering them, I'm helping them to be self-sufficient. So it's empowering, it's a human capital fund, it's a development fund. Zakat guarantees, and this is the beauty of zakat, it's a system whereby it guarantees every single person, anyone who's struggling, is a baseline provision. Nobody in an Islamic community will fall below this. There is always zakat which will help them stay afloat. Nobody will sink. And it'll be a means of them coming out of the cycle of poverty. Right? This vicious cycle that exists of poverty, zakat is there to help people break away and help them climb the social mobility ladder. Right? So it's very powerful. Zakat is liquidity injections to the market and acts as an economic stimulus by activating consumer spending. Right? So those who know about economics and studied finance, you'll know the entire economy runs on one thing, right? On a transaction. One person's expenditure is another person's income. And that's what everything that happens, all these economic stimuli that exist, it's all about encouraging spending, consumer spending. That's why the government wants consumer spending, because that is what allows it. Once the spending happens, there's a trickle-down effect. Then it's income for businesses. They then go to their suppliers. It's income for suppliers, supplies to warehouse, to producers. The money flows in the entire economy. So that's what zakat does. It kickstarts that kind of process. By giving people money, it's liquidity injections. It's liquidity in the markets. People then have something to spend. And when that's not there, there's nothing to spend. So again, look how it's an economic stimulus and helps spending. Zakah is a social contract between communities to look after one another and grow together. Again, very important, because Islam is about community. Islam is about being a society, right? It's there about caring for one another. It's there about, that's why the neighbors have such a right, so many rights. Jibreel alayhi salam, he kept on encouraging the Messenger of Allah and advising him about the neighbors and emphasizing their rights. So Islam is all about this community. There's so much emphasis on maintaining ties of kinship, looking after your relatives, your family, and everybody. So this kind of community spirit is embedded within Islam, and the instrument of zakah is there for that. It's there to maintain that kind of relationship. Qard, right? So you have lending, you have zakah, you have waqf, you have sadaqah. All these instruments are there, and institutions, they're there to maintain the kind of bedrock of society. Is there to maintain the cohesion of community. And if zakah is not practiced, there was no qard, there was no waqf system, no sadaqah, it will naturally break away and chip away that kind of bond that the community has. So zakah plays multiple roles, as we see. And if we move on to the next slide, finally, it's the benefits. These are multiple benefits, as you can see. As I mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from his infinite wisdom, and look, this is, you can just see this, right, and understand how How wise is Allah? We can never, a human mind can never grasp, right? Allah's knowledge, His wisdom, and that's why when scholars pray to Allah, we always ask Him that Allah, give me from your ilm. Allah, give me from your ilm. Right? When we ask Rabbi zidni ilma, Allah is al-alim, right? He's all knowing, and this is his how amazing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Look up for the payer, look at all the different benefits for the payer. Look at the different benefits for the recipient, as you can see on your screen. Look at the benefits for the society. So zakat plays a multiple role. It helps in the payer, the person who's paying. It helps his soul, it helps his wealth, it helps his conscience, it helps his hereafter, his dunya. It helps the payer in every single way. It helps the recipient. It helps the recipient's spiritual side, economic side, social side, his material side, and his hereafter. And for the society, it helps a macro and micro element, not only in terms of economically, but rather spiritually as well. It strengthens, zakat becomes a means for the community, for the economy to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you move on to the next slide. So now we start the calculation principles, right? Which is in the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to inshallah quickly go through the calculation, but sufficient for you to understand and do your own calculation. So in the next slide, the first is the conditions. We move on, and these are, before talking about how zakat is calculated, it's important to understand what makes zakat compulsory in the first place, because there's two things. One is the assets upon which you pay zakat. The other is the criteria and conditions which make zakat obligatory upon a person. So both are very important to understand. So look at the conditions of the payers. Not everybody is required to pay zakat. Rather, you have to be Muslim, of course, because it's an ibadah by its essence, and only Muslims are who recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah wants them to do ibadah, right? Because they recognize Him. Imagine what I just told you previously, that ibadah is a mercy. Worship is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us successful in the hereafter. It's a means to make us successful in the hereafter. Of course, it has worldly benefits, no doubt about it. But primarily, worship is there to connect us with Allah. If a person doesn't believe in Allah in the first place, how is he going to ever get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this worship? So worship, there's no worship for non-Muslims, because the primary condition for them is Iman, which they don't have. And so when you have Iman, Allah wants you to get close to Him. So your salah is there. Whenever the next salah you pray, when you pray Dhuhr salah, think of it, Allah wants you on that musalla. Allah wants you to come in front of Him, because it's a means for you and your salvation. It's no benefit to Allah, but Allah has put this there for you. So look, Allah is saying that this is for you, my servant, for you to come close to me. That's what Allah wants. So it's amazing. And then when you have this mindset, you'll want to stand in the musalla. You'll want to continue in sajda. You'll want to continue performing dhikr on the musalla. You won't want to leave the musalla. And that's the more we connect with Allah, the more we'll enjoy salah, the more we'll enjoy fasting, the more we'll enjoy paying zakah. But if we don't have Allah in our hearts and our minds, then it just becomes a chore, and we don't understand and appreciate the value. And honestly, a person in this life, a Muslim, who leaves this world without understanding Allah, then what a loss. Because Allah will be, if you die with Iman, Allah will 100% without a doubt enter you into paradise one day. And that's up to Allah. We can't decide when and where. Straight away, maybe, knowing Allah's mercy is just so merciful that people will be dumbstruck with how merciful Allah is in the akhirah. But imagine you spend this life 60 years, 70 years, but you never recognize Allah. And in the hereafter, you'll see how merciful and kind He was. That one regret would potentially stay, that only in the world, if I understood how kind He was, how merciful He was, because there's nobody like Him, right? So Muslim is number one. Then adolescence and mental capacity, number two, right? These are another two conditions, which is you have to be, according to the Hanafi school, that is, you have to be mature. If a child is there, there's no zakah on a child. So if there's a 5-year-old, 8-year-old, there's no zakah on them, as per the Hanafi school. Yes, according to all the other madhahib, the Maliki school, the Shafi'i school, and the Hanbali school, zakah is due on children's wealth if they are fulfill the other conditions relating to wealth. Mental capacity is another condition. Any person who lacks mental capacity, who is not sane, then according to the Hanafi school, there is no zakah due on the wealth. However, when it's according to other madhahib, mental capacity is not a condition. Therefore, even a person who lacks mental capacity, the guardian will be responsible to pay zakat. Now, what's the conditions relating to wealth? Very easy. First of all, you have to be owning this. Of course, you are not required to pay zakat on your neighbor's wealth. Only the money that you own, you'll have to pay zakat on. You have to be in possession of it. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that it has to be physically with you. Possession can be with you, or it can be in the bank, it can be with a friend. I can have left £1,000 with a friend to look after, and I can say to him, I'll take it after 1 year. There's zakat due on that because I still have power over that. And that's what possession means. Possession means having an authority over that wealth. So that's why investments also a form of possession, because I can instruct where that money will go. I have power over that wealth. I had volition. I delegated control over that wealth to a fund manager. So zakat will still be due upon that. Zakatable assets. Of course, I will only give zakat on assets which are zakatable. Allah, out of His infinite mercy, again, has not made zakat due on our personal wealth or personal belongings, such as your house, your car, your housing, kitchen appliances, your home furniture and decor, your goods, for example, your digital goods that you have, your phone, your laptop, and these things. So there's no zakat on your personal belongings at all. This is out of Allah's mercy. It's only certain assets which are defined in the Sharia, which we'll discuss. Nisab is very important, which we'll discuss. It's just a threshold. Nisab literally means a threshold. For a person to be obliged to pay zakat, he has to be having wealth which equals, or net wealth which equals the nisab, the threshold. And then finally, there has to be a lunar year that passes by. So zakat is an annual obligation. It's not a monthly obligation, rather it's an annual obligation. So once you have nisab, and we'll discuss this in detail, what nisab is and how it works. But all you have to understand is just one cycle, which is a yearly cycle, is a lunar cycle. So if I had nisab on the 1st of Ramadan, just say nisab was £400, I had £400 on the 1st of Ramadan. After 1 year, again on the 1st of Ramadan, that's my zakat year end, because 1 year has passed. The nisab is £450. I have £500. Therefore, because I have more than the nisab, I will pay zakat. It's as simple as that. It's like this annual cycle that takes place, right? So that's the conditions relating to wealth. So a person who has all these conditions, they'll be obliged to pay zakat. Now the question is, okay, let's move on to the next slide, which will talk about nisab. And again, if we move ahead. So what is the nisab? The nisab is simply a threshold. It's based on gold and silver, because at the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was gold and silver that were the currencies of the time. The Messenger of Allah had a bimetallic standard as a monetary system in that time, in that era, which is very common. That was happening in the Roman, Persian empires as well. So that was the norm of gold and silver. And of course, they used other things here and there, but generally it was the bimetallic standard that was commonly used. The nisab weights, according to certain scholars, it's as you can see, 87.48 grams or 612.36. Another opinion is 85 grams of gold and 595 grams of silver. But generally, the first two is the Hanafi scholars are more inclined towards that particular approach, and the other madhabs have it like it's 85 grams of gold and 595 grams. So as of 8th March, so it's literally 1 month old, but it does not mean much difference anyway. It's been fluctuating around there, plus minus. Gold has been, I think, slightly higher now. It's almost 3,700, 3,600, but that's a nisab, right? So that's how much you have. In the UK, a lot of scholars advocate still for silver, and saying that if you have silver, there are views of gold, no doubt about it. So when it comes to these issues, I generally advise just follow your local scholars. If your local scholar tells you use gold, use gold. If the local scholar tells you use silver, use silver. This is a matter of a difference of view and opinion among scholars, but generally our scholars they advocate still for using silver. But there's a shift now happening, I would say, a trend of moving more towards gold, because nisab was it was a threshold to distinguish between the wealthy and the poor for zakat purposes, right? So a person who has £3,500, he's self-sufficient, and he's able, there's no burden upon him when he gives 2.5% of the as zakat. Generally speaking, as your net wealth, that is net wealth. So it's not talking about your gross wealth. This is your net wealth. A person is in a position to pay 2.5% of that easily. Right? So it is, remember in zakat, £25 is upon every thousand. Every thousand has £25. So up here you're looking at almost like over £80, right? So it is around that mark. So £75 for £3,000, and £1,000 for £4,000. So that it's £100 for £4,000, right? That is really the that's how much is required of zakat, nothing else. And so a person is in a position to pay that. It's not going to be do him any harm. So some scholars are of the view that gold will be used, but generally silver is still the preferred or more common method that's used. If we go on the next slide, please. So how does it work? So this is a cycle, right? It's a cycle. If, for example, first of Ramadan, I own, as I mentioned, assets equaling the Nisab. So I had a bit of gold, a bit of silver, a bit of cash. That's all I have. They equal the Nisab, and the Nisab today is £350 as an example. So that now I'll pen it down in my diary or my phone or wherever it may be, in my calendar, that I am now a Nisab holder, right? My zakat year has started, it's begun. Just like how you have a financial year for your accounts, this is your zakat year that's beginning. So first of Ramadan. And really, it's not only in Ramadan. Zakat can be any time in the year. And this is one thing, because we have not been conscious about zakat and how it works, everybody's become a payer in Ramadan. It can't be that all of us had Nisab in Ramadan. It can't be, right? That's just not possible, practical, because we've all become wealthy or attained wealth at different times in the year. But it's fine. It is what it is. But we should educate our young and the new generation on how zakat should be done properly. That you can pay in advance in Ramadan, no problem. But make sure your year starts and your year end is properly done. That whether it's in Dhul Qa'dah, whether it's in Shawwal, whether it's in Rajab, that's your year end. It doesn't have to be in Ramadan. You can pay your zakat in advance. That's absolutely fine in Ramadan to gain the blessings and more reward. There is more reward in paying in Ramadan, no doubt about it. But you shouldn't delay. You should pay in advance. That's the key thing, right? So it's first of Ramadan. I have £400. I made a note of this. Thereafter, let 1 year pass. On your zakat year end, once that year has passed, if on the same date after that, so first of Ramadan the next year, 1443 as an example, I had £500 and the Nisab was £400. That means after 1 year, I have the Nisab. I still have Nisab of that current live Nisab, not the old Nisab. I look at the live Nisab of that date. Because I have the live Nisab, therefore now I have to pay zakat. If there's been fluctuations in my wealth in between, so for example, my wealth was £200, £100, then it jumped up to £700 to £500, £400, that doesn't matter, right? The fluctuations will disregard. As long as the beginning and end are above Nisab, I will pay zakat. It's all about the beginning and end. The only time we will consider what happens in the interim is if it hits zero. Right? If your wealth goes to zero, you completely, your net wealth and net worth is absolutely gone to zero. It's all gone. You have no funds whatsoever. Then your Nisab year is cancelled. What that means is this year, zakat year that you had, so first of Ramadan, and just say by first of Muharram, you had zero. You cancel that year, meaning that year is no longer applicable. It's gone. It's become redundant. So now when first of Ramadan 1443 comes, okay, you will not pay zakat on that because your year got cancelled. That lunar year became redundant because you hit zero. And therefore, you will wait. The next time you get Nisab, that will start a new year now. There'll be a new cycle. And that's how zakat works. Alternatively, just say if Ramadan came, 1443 Ramadan came, and I never had the Nisab. I was below Nisab. So Nisab was £400, I only had £100. Even that will invalidate your year. Meaning, first of Ramadan no longer is your zakat date that you pay zakat on. because that year has become cancelled. You never had nisab at the year end, and therefore that year has become redundant. Now you will pay zakat depending on the next time you own nisab. You'll start a new year, because zakat, the rule is حتى يحول عليه الحول, that a year has to pass on wealth. So really your year never stays the same. The date never stays the same. Your date keeps changing depending if you don't pay yearly, that is. If you are a person upon every single year you have enough wealth to pay zakat, then your year generally stays the same. So it'll be first of Ramadan, whatever date you have. But if you have some years you are zakat, you have wealth equaling the nisab, some years you have wealth which is below the nisab, then your year shouldn't stay the same. It should be moving around, because it's an annual thing. It's not a fixed thing that after 5 years you'll be paying on the same date. That means 5 years have passed on the same date. Whereas the hadith and fiqh teaches us it's only 1 year that passes on the date. Right? So that's how the whole calculation works on zakat, and that's just the cycle. Should we move on to the next slide? This is just a quick point that really there's only one nisab, because in the time of the Messenger of Allah, the nisab was gold and silver. It was 20 dinar and 200 dirhams. But the Messenger of Allah set this because of the purchasing power. The ratio between dirhams and dinar, as you can see, is 10-1, which means what 1 dinar could buy you, the basket of goods that 1 dinar could buy you in the market, is the same thing that 10 dirhams could buy you in the market. Which therefore means the nisab is the same, because the purchasing power of gold and silver was identical. But it was just that both people used both currencies. Some people had silver, some people had gold. But the purchasing power of the nisab was actually one. So what 200 dirhams could buy you is exactly the same what 20 dinar could buy you. So really there's not 2 nisabs, there's only 1 nisab in that time. But because we've converted to fiat currency, there's been a discrepancy that's grown between gold and silver. Now the ratio is 100-1 as opposed to 10-1, right? So if we move on to the next slide. This is just a point which I had mentioned earlier, and sorry for the small print. I don't know why that happened, but it's wherever, as I mentioned earlier, just ask your local scholars and they will guide you, inshallah, on which nisab to use. If you move on to the next slide. So now this is where we start the actual zakatable assets. So what is zakat due upon? Cash, receivables, gold and silver, trade assets, investments in zakatable assets, agricultural produce, and animal livestock. For this purpose of this presentation, we will not talk about animals or agricultural produce, because it doesn't apply to most people. We move on. Cash, right? Very easy. Cash is probably the most simple asset. Whatever cash you have, wherever it may be, you have to pay zakat on this, right? Wherever it may be, whoever has cash, wherever, whichever currency, whichever form, zakat is due upon that. It's not only on the unspent amount. So what that means is zakat is not like tax. Tax, as you have income tax, for example, which is on revenue. It's revenue based. So it's based on your earnings. So if you earn, for example, if you earn £25,000 per annum, then your zakat is your tax works upon that after your personal allowance, right? That's how the tax system works on your revenue. Whereas in zakat, it doesn't work like that. Zakat is about the retained income, retained cash, the unspent amount. So I might have earned £25,000 in the year, but I only have, on my zakat year end, I only have £200. Zakat will be on the 200, not on the revenue that's earned, right? Next slide. Receivables. This is talking about money which is owed to you. So for example, I lent somebody money. I gave a friend £1,000 loan. The rule is zakat is due upon that every single year. Zakat is payable. But I have an option. I can pay zakat now and add it to my my calculation, or I can wait until that is paid back to me. Once it's paid back to me, then I will have to retrospectively go back and pay for every single year it was outstanding from that wealth itself, or from any other wealth. No problem, it doesn't matter. But that's the principle. So I have that option which is available to me. Secondly, credit sales. If I have sold any stock, I'm a business, I have outstanding invoices, people owe me money for so many different things, then I will I will include those invoices, outstanding invoices, as part of my zakat calculation each year. Then there are certain receivables which are not zakatable, right? For example, non-trade receivables. If there's a person who provides services, he's a lawyer, he's an accountant, he's a contractor advising on certain projects. He's an employee. Probably the most common one is an employee, where your salary hasn't been paid to you yet. There's no zakat due upon that, right? Payouts and awards. If you won an award for something, zakat is not due upon that. If it's outstanding, claims and damages. You settled a case and you want some damages. You awarded some damages, or you made a claim for something and you received it afterwards. It was outstanding on your zakat calculation date. That was outstanding. You will not pay zakat on it while it's outstanding. Likewise, settlements. So if you have settlements which are outstanding, you've just settled with somebody. You went to a store, and because of their lack of cleanliness or keeping things in a proper manner, you fell down, you got hurt. Unfortunately, Allah save us, and they have to now pay you a settlement because you filed a case against them, and that settlement is outstanding. You've won an award of £1 million, then you will not pay zakat on that whilst it's outstanding. Likewise, inheritance shares. Unfortunately, somebody passes away in the family, and the inheritance it's still going through the probate phase. You will not have to pay zakat whilst it's going through that probate and whilst the funds have not been released to you and given to you. Next slide. Gold and silver, very easy. When it comes to gold and silver, according to the Hanafi school, everything is zakatable, regardless of how much it is. Right? Gold and silver is zakatable. The non-Hanafi schools, they do not consider all gold to be zakatable. They are the view that personal jewelry of gold and silver that a sister wears is exempt from zakat. That's like clothing, according to them. They don't count that for zakat purposes. Mixed metal jewelry. So if there's a sister who wears mixed metal jewelry, a bit of gold, a bit of nickel, a bit of palladium, like white gold, for example. White gold is made up of a few metals, right, put together. In that scenario, you will still pay zakat on the gold. Likewise, if it's 9 carat, 12 carat, 18 carat, 24 carat, you will pay zakat on the amount of gold which exists in the item. So if it's 9 carats of gold, you will pay zakat on the 9 carats of gold. Right? How do you work that out? It's price of gold carat per gram, multiply the number of grams. So if 9 carat is, for example, 20 pounds a gram, whereas 24 carat is 36 pounds. So you take 20 pounds, and the entire ring, if it's a ring, it's to say 10 grams. So it's 20 then times 10. That's how you work it out. Okay, that's how that will work. Which price do you use? A person can use the scrap value, right? A sister can use a scrap value. Scrap value is like the second-hand price, because if you go online and use the live prices, that's brand new gold, and that's generally more expensive. But the scrap gold value it's the second-hand value of gold, and which is what the shopkeepers will buy your gold off you for. So if you take your ring to a jeweler, he will tell you, look, we will buy this for X amount. They're not giving the price of brand new gold. It's a scrap value of gold, which is like second-hand gold, and that's what you can use. And scrap value is very easily accessible online. There's a website called gold-traders.co.uk. Gold-traders.co.uk. They give you a list of all scrap gold prices. That's what I use commonly whenever anybody asks me, what's the price of this gold or whatever, can you help me work this out? I just go on the website and I check it out. So that's a handy tip you can use for yourselves. Next slide. Property. When it comes to property, zakat, as I mentioned earlier, out of Allah's infinite mercy, zakat is not due on our residential property. If you are a property trader, which means you buy properties to flip and sell with a profit, you used to be of refurb and then you sell, zakat is due on the entire property, because that's your business. Your business is buying and selling properties. If it's a buy to let, where you are leasing property for rental income, zakat is not due on the property. It's only on the unspent amount of rental income with you. Very important. It's only an unspent amount of rental income that's with you. Next slide. Investments, if you continue. Okay, this is more about if a person is a trader, right? You invest in funds, mutual funds, listed equities and shares. Then it depends. What is the objective? Why are you trading? Is it a buy and hold trading strategy, which means you are there for growth, building a diversified portfolio for the long term, which is majority of people when they invest in shares it is for the long term. Very few people. You do get day traders and swing traders who are there just to make a quick margin in the volatility and fluctuations. So they're trying to capture short term positive price fluctuation, but that's not so common. Majority or many people are there who create a diversified portfolio with a long term view in investing and trading. So for such people, zakah is not due on the entire amount of the portfolio of the equity or the share. Zakah is only due on the net zakatable assets. Now, it's very difficult. Really, what you have to do is you have to look at the balance sheets of every single company that you're invested in and understand the net zakatable assets. So you look at the current assets, the then current assets, the current liabilities, then current liabilities. You work all that out, and I've done this personally, right? It's very time consuming. If people don't have are not financial literate, don't have financial literacy, and don't understand how balance sheets works, it gets very complicated and challenging. So what we did was I did a research when I was with the National Zakat Foundation in the UK. I looked at the FTSE 100 companies. I reviewed 100 balance sheets, and from those 100 balance sheets I looked at, 66 of the 100 companies had net zakatable assets below 25%. Okay, and this whole research is available online. You can Google it and you find the research. It is online. And when that was the case, their net zakatable assets were below 25%. So the majority were below 25%. And secondly, the other 34, majority of them were non-compliant companies. There were banks, tobacco, insurance companies. As you know, FTSE 100 has a large amount of non-compliant companies in stock. So based on that, you can use a proxy of 25% relatively comfortably on listed equities to pay zakat. So you can just apply 25% on your portfolio, on your equity in shares, your listed shares. It will be sufficient. Okay. Only, as I mentioned, active trading, buying and selling with clearly a view just to sell on, and you're just waiting for the right price, but you're clearly there just to sell, and it's not a growth fund, rather you're a trading fund. You're just there to trade. You're just trying to capture short-term profit, very short-term. So you're looking for fluctuations. As soon as there's some kind of positive fluctuation or a positive increase, you will sell and on-sell that. Then zakah is due on the whole amount. Next slide. Land and real estate, same thing as, see, the principle is the same. There's no difference in the principle. The underpinning principle is the same, whether it's shares, whether it's land, whether it's private equity, whether it's ETFs, whether it's whatever it may be, right? The underpinning principle is the same. If you are buying and selling to on-sell immediately, meaning you're just making a few additions, but clearly have set up to sell, zakah is due on that. If that's the course of your business, look, that's a business. Your business is buying and selling land. Your business is buying and selling property. You're a property trader. Zakah will be on that as inventory. If that is listed on the balance sheet, that is then listed as inventory on a balance sheet. Every inventory is zakatable by its essence and very nature. In fact, even the accounting standards, if you look at the international accounting standards that exist, the way they describe inventory is almost identical to the way the fuqaha and scholars in Islam describes amwal tijara, because it's the same kind of thing. It's bought for resale purposes. That's all. It's therefore to be sold on for making a profit. Land or real estate purchased as a long-term store of value with no intention to sell at present is not zakatable. What I mean by that is, I might buy a property, in future I might sell it, but right now I'm not, because fiat currency is depreciating. The value of money or value of fiat currencies like my pound, my dollar, it depreciates because of inflation. As more money is printed and comes in circulation, the value of the pound decreases. The purchasing power decreases, you'll see other commodities increase in price, which means that what £1 can buy you today, it cannot buy you the same next year. It's less. So I want to hedge against this depreciation of a fiat currency. So what can I do? I can convert if I have £10,000 of savings, instead of keeping it as £10,000, I can convert it into another asset just to store that value. I can invest that into an appreciating asset and hedge that risk that's there of inflation. And by doing that, I am now ensuring the value retains and remains. But now the new form of wealth I have will not be zakatable if it's not a zakatable asset in and of itself. Yes, if I changed it into gold, of course it'll be zakatable because gold is a zakatable asset. If it's land or real estate, by its nature, it's not zakatable. So one day in the future, I might sell, but right now I'm not selling. That is not my intention. It's just an investment. That's all it is. It's not business. It's investment. Zakah is not due upon that, right? If it's leased, as we mentioned, rental income, zakah will only be upon the rental income, which is unspent and with you on your zakah anniversary or zakah year end, and nothing else. Next slide. Pensions and retirement. Pensions are of two types, right? There's more than two actually, right? I'm talking, you have state pension here, but then within defined contribution schemes, you have so many different types of pensions. And again, this is something that I researched and reviewed extensively. I looked over, I think, over 100 pension funds in understanding the makeup, the constituents, how they invested, the different types of funds. And this is like a culmination of the entire research. So pensions are those pensions which are defined contribution schemes. What is a defined contribution scheme? It's generally for all those in a private sector. If you are in a private sector, very, very likely you'll have a defined contribution scheme. Defined benefit schemes, which are not zakatable, are generally reserved for the NHS and public sector civil servant roles. But even that's diminishing. But generally, the defined benefit is for them. There's no zakat due on such roles. So if you have a pension with the NHS, there's no zakat due upon that. They are career average and final salary schemes. That's the way and the method in which your retirement benefits are calculated. They're two different methods. These are formulae, right? The final salary and career average. So zakat is not due upon that. Zakat is due on the defined contribution schemes. And people always ask this question: why do I have to pay zakat on a pension when I don't have access? Access, and when the scholars talk about access for zakat purposes, it doesn't mean you have to have the ability to spend it now and now. If you've invested something, that is the greatest form of, you could say, the zakatable nature of something. If you invest in zakatable assets and you've delegated that kind of responsibility to manage this fund to a fund manager, and it's for your retirement benefit after 30, 40, 50 years, that's why pension is locked. Why is pension locked? It's there so that you don't go and spend the money after 10 years. The pension is in your benefit. The lock by the government is in your benefit. So you have something to live off on when you retire. So the access is not a problem. Rather, you've invested this. It's an investment that you make. You can, for example, you can have, if you go to a high street Islamic bank, they will have bank accounts like fixed term deposits, which are 36 months. You don't have access to it. You cannot withdraw. When that's the case, will it be that zakah is not due upon those fixed term deposits? Of course, it will still be based on the underlying what's happening. But it's there with a purpose. It's locked for a purpose, but it's still growing. It's still developing. It's an investment. It's growing in value, in capital. Therefore, zakah is still due upon it. Next slide. So when it comes to different types of pensions, it can get very confusing because, again, it's all about financial literacy. Unfortunately, as Muslims, we're not financially literate, which means we need to educate ourselves more on finance. There has to be much more education done, really understanding. Before you invest in a pension, understand, is it halal? Understand, is it Sharia compliant? Before you invest in shares, understand, is it halal to do this, what I'm doing? Before you invest in cryptos, right, cryptocurrencies, understand, is this halal, what I'm doing or not? Invest in any kind of endeavor, you have to be financially literate first. It's an obligation. It's not even an option. You have to be aware of what you're doing is halal or haram. That's completely necessary, right? There's no question and doubt about that. Zakat is then a secondary question. So it's very important. Please understand the um, the nature of your investment and whatever you're doing. Make sure it's Sharia compliant. If you have a pension, make sure it's Sharia compliant. But if you have a pensions are of these types generally. I've reviewed like the top 20 of each. So direct property fund, I looked at the top 20. I looked at Sharia compliant funds, I looked again at the top 15 to 20. Equity funds, I looked at the top 20. Diversified multi-asset mixed funds, I looked at the top 20. And this was like the I would say the weighted average of each, right? So 15% of direct property funds. If you have a direct property fund, you can comfortably take 15% for your zakat purposes. You don't have to now look at the entire pension. People can't do this. I know this from first hand because alhamdulillah, I help people work out the zakat regularly in Ramadan. And just from my experience, majority of people are not able to access or understand how you look at a fact sheet, how you look at a pension makeup, what it exists of, so on and so forth. So if you have a property fund, just take 15%, inshallah, it'll be fine for you. If you have a Sharia compliant fund, apply 26%. What does that mean? So just say your pension is worth £1,000, zakat will only be due upon 26% of the 1,000, which is £260. So you pay 2.5% of the £260. That's all. You will not pay 2.5% on the entire £1,000. That's how these proxies are applied. So same thing with the 27% on an equity fund, 50% on a diversified fund, and 100% on a bonds and fixed income. Of course, that's not Sharia compliant. To have a bonds and fixed income fund, a pension fund, it's not halal. It's completely haram. So I would advise anybody who has that to, or any type of an non-Sharia compliant pension, to urgently speak to the HR and try to switch it over to a Sharia compliant fund. The money that you want to live off when you die is halal. You don't want your retirement funds to be haram, and that's the income upon which you live your last final years on. Next slide. This is business. Continue. So it's very simple for business. If a person has a business, if you look, this is a typical balance sheet kind of approach. A business will have bank deposits and petty cash, trade receivables, which are zakatable, loan receivables, which are zakatable, inventory, stock, and investments in zakatable assets. All these are zakatable as per the same rules we just discussed. Non-zakatable are your property, plant, and equipment, so your fixtures and fittings, your capital and fixed goods, your income-generating assets, collaterals that you have with somebody are not zakatable, and your intangibles, so your copyrights and these things, trademarks, software, which are not there for resale purposes, they are not zakatable either in a business. Next slide. How do you value and how do you price your trade assets? Well, it's on your retail price. Okay, so whatever the retail price is. So if I'm selling my assets it's marked at £5 for whatever it may be, I will apply that when it comes to zakat calculation purposes. If you don't have a retail price yet, nor is there a known market value, you can apply the cost price or any other proxy which works for you, right? So you can use cost price in that scenario if you have no other pricing mechanism to price this. For example, you have a fish and chip shop. A fish and chip shop will have potatoes in the back. We'll have like 10 sacks of potatoes. At that particular moment in time, there is no retail value on the potato sacks. They've only bought that. And it's like how VAT works as well. There's no value add to the potatoes. The potatoes are staying there and they're static. No extra labor has gone into the potatoes. Neither are they being sold and chips have been fried. Nothing has happened. And so the potatoes in that scenario can be priced at the cost price, because that's the only price that there's been no value add, no labor put into that to add any further value. Right. Next, your liability. So with zakat, you can always deduct liabilities. Okay, there's always debts which you can deduct. So for example, debts which are payable in full, something which has been incurred. This is the key, not future. Any debt which has been incurred right now. So I went and bought, for example, an iPad, and I've taken a 0% financing on this. So I have every month, Barclays Partner Finance will require me to pay a percentage of that payment, right? It's spread across 12 months. So I'm paying in installments. I can deduct the full installments right now as part of that, right? You can deduct the full amount. It's 0%, but it's payable over across installments. I can do that. If I entered into a 24-month financing scheme, I can only deduct 12 months worth of liabilities and payments. Okay. Next, arrears. If I have arrears or overdue payments, for example, I have a rented property and my lease is outstanding. I have not paid my landlord. I have to pay him for 2 months worth of rent, which is now in arrears. It's overdue. I can deduct that from my zakat calculation as well. Personal loans. If I borrowed money from my brother, I intend to pay him £2,000 this year. I can deduct that £2,000 from my zakat calculation. That's fine as well. 12 months of bank loans. If you have a bank loan or any other type of loan again, and it has interest, unfortunately, a Muslim should not be, of course, taking such loans. But for whatever reason, a Muslim was in husnul dhan bihi. We have like a good thought of every Muslim. A Muslim does only when he is forced to, and unfortunately, he was in a position where he had no option but to take a bank loan, and therefore he did that. And there's interest on there. You can only deduct the capital repayment amount, the principal, not the interest that's on there of the 12 months that are due, right? So you can't deduct any interest, but only the capital that's payable within the next 12 months. Next slide. And so the formula and net result is this, right? Zakatable assets, which we discussed, minus deductible liabilities equals net zakatable assets. So your gold, silver, cash, receivables, investment in zakatable assets, business stock, all this we've discussed. You minus your liabilities which are due right now, whatever you have, which have been incurred and due, equals your net zakatable assets. If your net zakatable assets are equal to or more than Nisab, you have to pay zakat. That's on condition you have all the other criteria you mentioned. You're Muslim, you're adolescent, you're mature, possession, ownership, Nisab, year has passed, so on and so forth. If your net zakatable assets are below the Nisab, no zakat is due. Okay, you don't have to pay zakat. Next slide. Okay, and that's it really. That's the end of the presentation. So yeah, I mean, let's just go through the questions. So if the admin want to ask the questions, then we can just work through them, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair, Muftī Faraz. The first question one mentioned, do we calculate zakat based on the family's income or as individuals?
Yeah, it's a very good question. How it work is it should be done as an individual, because you might have individually certain liabilities. You can't now apply those liabilities on your wife, on your daughter, on your son, right? So it should be an individual calculation, but then you can pay in one go. One person can pay on behalf of everybody. That's not a problem. So the husband, the father can take the responsibility to pay on everybody's behalf.
Gold jewelry could be with mixed metals. How do you differentiate?
Yeah, so you look at so gold jewelry with mixed metals, you'll find out how much gold is in that item. So if gold is 20%, 30% based on carat, you can just pay zakat on that. You will have to pay zakat on that.
Someone mentioned if the zakat threshold is, for example, £400, if in the first year they have £350 and second year they have 450, do they pay zakat on the whole 450 or on the 50?
450, on the full 450. Zakat is always paid on the full amount that you have, never on just the increase from one year to the other.
Bursaries given from school, university, are they zakatable?
Yeah, they are. That becomes your cash, which you can use, so they are zakatable.
Someone requesting the website for the second-hand gold price.
Yeah, it's gold-traders.co.uk. If somebody wants to just put a link in the chat, that might help everybody. Gold-traders.co.uk.
Borrowing money, if the person hasn't given it back yet, do they pay zakat?
Yeah, if they haven't. Sorry, are you the lender or debtor? What's the question?
So a friend has borrowed money from someone, and that friend hasn't given the money back. So do they give money zakat on this?
So in that scenario, you don't. I mean, zakat is due upon that. Meaning, as long as the friend is acknowledging they have to repay you, zakat is due upon that annually. But you have the option. You can wait until you get the money back and pay for all the years, or you can pay each year. That's up to you, but it is due upon that.
Someone's asking about local government and sorry, civil service pensions in terms of halal and haram. How do they find that?
No, the defined benefit schemes are halal. They're okay. They are a form of deferred income. That's what it is, deferred salary.
Owning bonds, is that halal or haram?
No, it's not halal. It's not Sharia compliant. Bonds are loans with interest, so it's not halal to invest in that.
Zakat on ordered stock. It hasn't arrived yet, nor will it arrive in Ramadan.
Yeah, zakat is still due upon that. That's the preponderant view of the fuqaha. The zakat is still due on stock which hasn't arrived, but you have the option to wait until it comes in and pay zakat then if you want.
What's the best way to find out the Nisab threshold for people in UK?
You can go on, for example, on darulfiqh.com, which is my website. One of the websites, the Nisab is there. You can go on the National Zakat Foundation website. You can go on any charity website, to be honest. Most charities have it, right? So whichever charity that you want to donate towards, they should have the Nisab there. But nzf.org.uk, they have the Nisab. Darulfiqh.com has the Nisab. So feel free wherever you wish to go.
Sorry. On the pension pot, do you pay 2.5 on the annual pension pot?
Yeah, so as we discussed on pensions, it just depends on the type of pension you have, number one. If it's a defined contribution scheme or defined benefit scheme. If it's a defined contribution scheme, it depends on the type of fund, right? Because everybody can potentially have a different fund. If it's a property fund, you can apply 15% as a proxy. So if it's £1,000, you apply 15%. If it's Sharia compliant, you apply 26%. If it's equity, you can apply 27%. If it's mixed assets, diversified, 50%. If it's bond and fixed income funds, it's 100%.
Gotcha. Are you able to give zakat money for needy people to travel to another country to make a better life?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. As long as they are eligible when you're doing the assessment, yeah.
I think we've answered this one. Can you pay your zakat, your wife's zakat for her?
Yep, you can. That's absolutely fine. Inshallah, you'll be rewarded for doing so. Allah will give you a lot of reward.
Okay, if someone's asking a specific question, if I own a second property that is rented, how much zakat is due? For illustration, the finance is 570,000. There is qard hasana of 100,000, and the sale value is 775,000.
Yeah, so if it's a rental property, as you're saying, your finance that you have, you can deduct 12 months worth of financing, depending on the type. If it's Sharia compliant financing, then very likely you can't deduct all of the outstanding 12 months, because in a Sharia compliant mortgage, a home purchase plan, and buy to let is generally a diminishing musharaka or ijara product, which means you can only deduct 1 month's worth of payment. If it's an interest mortgage, then you can deduct the principal of 12 months because it's a loan, not the interest. Any other loans that you have, you can deduct 12 months worth. Then the net of that unspent income that you have with you, you'll pay zakat on that amount.
If a child has savings from the Nisab, will they take their zakat date as 1 year from the date they become mature?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, if you follow the Hanafi school, that will exactly be the rule. It's hard because it's not easy to ascertain. Imagine a child, how does he know when he becomes baligh? But that's the parents as guardians should be having oversight. And this is the beauty of our deen. We should be so connected as a father to your son, as a mother to your daughter, that you should know that when these changes occur, and we should be helping the young ones get closer to Allah and understand their duties. And so therefore that encourages us to have a closer bond with our children.
If you have not paid zakat due to ignorance or forgetfulness, can you make it up in later years?
Yeah, it's compulsory. It's still an obligation. You have to make it up. It's not a question of should you make it up. So you should go back and calculate as best as you can and keep paying small amounts. I know sometimes it can go into the thousands and not everybody has that money. So what you can do is make small payments as much as you can, monthly or whatever's in your capacity, and do a lot of tawbah to Allah. It's at the end of the day, remember, it's not Allah that benefits from your zakah, but it's an obligation upon you. Right? It's a responsibility. Allah wanted this from you. So you make it up and you do a lot of tawbah to Allah, and inshallah Allah will accept your tawbah and accept your payments.
Cryptocurrency, do you pay zakat on that?
Good question. So if you are trading in cryptocurrencies, your clear intention is only that you're buying and selling, you have a portfolio, but just to sell and get further profit, then cryptos are all zakatable. However, if that's not the case, it's a long-term strategy that you have, it's a buy and hold for growth purposes, then it depends on the type of crypto you have. So if you have, for example, Bitcoin will always be zakatable, because that is it's a monetary system. It's a medium of exchange. It's a means of payment. The very essence of it is to function as a currency. So zakat will be due upon it at all times, even though it's a digital asset. Zakat will still be due upon it. If it's like a security token, then it's treated like a listed company. If it's a governance token, there's no zakat due upon it. If it's a utility token, there's no zakat due upon it. So those who understand the jargon here in cryptos will be able to appreciate the different types of tokens that are there.
A life insurance policy was given from inheritance to a grandchild. Do the parents pay zakat on it when it is distributed when the child becomes of age, each year accruing interest, unfortunately? How should the money also be spent?
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand from this question, what will have happened is that life insurance will have been triggered and it'll have gone into a trust fund, and it's kept until the child is of age, of 18 usually, and then the fund would release, the trustees of the fund would release those funds to the child. Now, in that instance, it just depends on the type of trust. If it's a discretionary trust, there'll be no zakat upon it. If it's like a bare trust setup, then there will be zakat. So it just really depends on the trust setup, how it works. It just from top of my head, generally how this works is there's no zakat due upon that whilst it's there in that scenario, because it's been released without any possession of the child. He has nothing to do. In most cases, he's not a trustee or anything. It'll be like a future gift that will be given to him when he's 18 years old. But again, just for to make sure on this, it just depends on the trust, the type of trust that's involved.
Can a wife pay zakat to her husband?
In the Hanafi school, no. In other madhab, there's scope for doing
that. If someone saved for the children's future, do they have to pay zakat on that money?
Yes. In its current form, where there's no liability that's been incurred, zakat is still due upon that.
Sure. There's one question here. I've invested shares, for example, 20,000. However, I'm making a loss. Do I pay any zakat on the investment?
It's a very good question. Zakat doesn't work on profit and loss, right? Even when you're looking at a business, you don't look at the profit and loss statement. It's the balance sheet. It's on your things that you own. So even though you may have made a loss this year, zakat will still be due. So even in your scenario, you still look at the market value right now and pay zakat on that, depending on the intention. If it's long term, you'll just take 25%. If it's a short term, you're buying, selling, trading, looking for a quick profit, quick win, then the full value will be zakatable.
So just a notice for all attendees, these slides, Shā Allāh, will be provided to all participants afterwards. I'm just putting that out. There's quite a few questions regarding that. I cannot access my pension fund until I retire. Can I delay zakat until it is paid out?
I mean, we know you can't access, nobody can access the pension, but what you should do for the defined contribution scheme, you should be paying zakat to some level of degree annually, ideally in the whole amount, and it's generally not much, right? Because it's not even £25 per 1,000. That's if you're paying on the full 1,000. Remember, we're only applying those proxies. So ideally pay on the full amount that's due. So if you have, like, for example, you have £1,000 to pay, if you're in a position to pay. If not, then break it down. Pay monthly, pay what you can, pay £20, £30 a month. If you can't do that, pay whatever's in your capacity, but write it down in your will or have it written down somewhere. And look, I have this much outstanding zakat, and if I was to pass away, then please, from my estate, cover the zakat for me.
I have a Rayyan mortgage. Is this deductible? What immediate debts are deductible? What about utility bills?
Yeah, good question. So Al Rayyan product, it's the 1 month's payment which is deductible. So your 1 month's payment can be deductible, and utility bills, future utility bills cannot be deducted. So next month's like gas, next month's phone bill, next month's electricity bill, I can't deduct that right now. It's not been incurred, right? It just fluctuates. That's based on usage. The current, like, council tax, I can deduct the whole thing. Sure. How council tax works is it's billable. The full amount is given in April, right? That's owed. They send you, generally March, they send you your yearly council tax. but then the full amount is payable, but they split it for you into months. You can have 10 months or 12 months. That's up to you. So that's how it works. You can potentially deduct the whole council tax.
What happens if you're working full time but you still have a student loan that hasn't been paid off?
You cannot deduct the student loan because that is deducted from your salary at source. Right? It's already been deducted for you, so you're paying it off. So you can't deduct 12 months worth of student loans. Unless you intend to make an immediate, like you're saving up to pay a lump sum off, right? And that's your intention, then you can deduct the amount that you're saving to pay off that.
Does zakat have to be paid out fully on your zakat due date, or can you distribute over time across Ramadan, for example?
You should pay zakat immediately. However, certain scholars have given flexibility when it comes to paying for someone to spread it across Ramadan. There is some flexibility in stretching it across Ramadan, but it should be as soon as possible.
Can you give your zakat to someone in prison?
As long as they're eligible.
Okay. If someone has a Sharia pension with fixed contribution, how is the zakat calculated?
Sorry, say that again.
If someone has a Sharia pension with fixed contribution, how is the zakat calculated?
Yeah, so it's on the pension fund value. So you take 26% and apply to that your current pot value. So if your current pot is worth £10,000, you apply 26% to that, which is £260, and then you pay 2.5% on 260. That's how zakat works.
Someone saying they work for a high street bank. So what kind of pension do they have? Is it then a defined or non-defined scheme? And if zakat is payable, what zakat proxy do they use?
Where do they work? High street bank.
G.
Yeah, so that will very likely be a defined contribution scheme. The Zakātable one. You need to find out what it is. Is it an equity one? Is it a Shariah one? And then you'll apply the proxies accordingly.
Does one pay zakat on platinum or any other precious metals?
No, only if that's your business and you're buying and selling them.
Can you deduct contractual payments, for example, 24-month phone contracts?
Yeah, it's a good question. Personally, I'm of the view that yes, you can deduct only 12 months worth of payments because that is payable, that's incurred, that's due upon you. You have no way but to pay that amount. When it comes to debts, I just want to make a disclaimer here and mention quite clearly for everybody. See, the reason why debts were deductible in the first place was it shouldn't be that by paying zakat, you are unable to pay those debts. That's the whole purpose of deducting debts. And that's why personally, although scholars advise 12 months, there are a few scholars who advise only 1 month deduction, which my personal view is inclining and leaning towards that. Because if I deduct 12 months of everything, and we live in a debt economy where everything is financed, everything is long term, what will you pay zakat on? Right? Everything has been deducted. So it doesn't make sense to deduct 12 months personally. But it's just I've not written a research paper on this, and inshallah I will. This is one thing I want to do after Ramadan, is write a research paper on this, share it with other muftis and ulama and senior scholars, and revisit this rule of 12 months. I just don't feel it's doing justice, or it's accurately representing what the principle was there for.
Jazakumullah khairan. I think all these other questions have been answered already. If anyone has any further questions, are there any tools or resources they can access outside the webinar to get their queries answered, Mufti Sahib?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to, there's darulfiqh.com, or if you want, you can go to nzf.org.uk. National Zakat Foundation run a service annually to answer zakat queries. I also assist in answering those queries, so you're more than welcome to go there and ask your queries. You can book a consultation and have your queries spoken through. Okay, now Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And my dua is literally in English, so that we are conscious that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He allow us to maximize our this month that we have. First of all, may Allah balighna Ramadan, right? May Allah take us to Ramadan, make us reach just a couple of moments, touching distance away. And may Allah make us reach that time, allow us to benefit as much as possible from Him. May Allah allow us and bring us closer to Him. What we want Allah to, there's two ways to get close to Allah. One is ijtiba, and one is inaba. And Allah talks about this, that He gives guidance to those وَيَهْدِي إِلَيْهِ مَن يُنِيبُ, and before that Allah mentioned those who وَيَجْتَبِي مَن يَشَاءُ. Allah, He chooses, and then He guides those who make an effort to Him. We want to be from amongst those who Allah just chooses. We don't have nothing to present to Allah in its reality. We have nothing whatsoever. We want Allah just to select us, take us in His mercy. We want to become close to Allah. We want Allah to love us. That's what we want. And then everything will fall into place. We just want Allah. We want nothing else but Allah. We want His love. We want His mercy. We want to be amongst those who get to see Him in the hereafter, amongst those who take joy and pleasure in taking His name and doing dhikr of Allah. That's the only thing of benefit. That's the only thing of value. Everything else is worthless. Everything else is temporary, is ephemeral, and everything else will perish. The only thing that will remain is Allah, His name, His might, His majesty. So may Allah connect us with Him. And this Ramadan, may Allah allow us to, may Allah love us in this month. That's what we want. Allah falls in love with us. Allah accepts us. Allah raises us with the Salihin, the Anbiya, the Shuhada, the Siddiqeen. That's what we want. That on the Day of Judgment we are with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we get entry in Jannah, and then forever and ever we know Allah is happy with us. There'll never be a time where our sinful selves and our filthy selves are a means of displeasing Allah, because that's what we don't want. When He's so merciful to us, how can I displease Him when He's done so much for me? So may Allah allow us. May Allah bless the organizers of this amazing effort. May Allah bless the entire team. Grant you all ikhlas. Grant you Allah's closeness. May Allah give you barakah in your wealth, in your family, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you all and grant you the most noble of deaths in this life, and may Allah raise you with the ulama and salihin on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Ameen. Jazakumullah khair to all of you. It's been an honor and a pleasure to serve you all, and I humbly request you that you make dua for me as well. I'm the most in need here. Honestly speaking, I'm the most in need here of your du'as. I really and truly believe that all of you are the friends of Allah. I need your du'as. Make dua for me, especially in Ramadan, that Allah forgives me from all my sins and Allah makes me close to Him and Allah accepts me, because I'm very, very far from Allah and I just want to become closer to Allah. So please do make this dua for me. I'll really appreciate it. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.